It's Friday the 26th of October and we're just leaving Holyhead. On passage for Dickie's in Bangor. It was a grey, cloudy day when we left Holyhead. The weather forecast was for variable winds 3 to 4, which usually means nothing at all, and certainly early on in the journey that's exactly what we got, very little wind, with quite a glassy sea, just a slight bit of swell rolling into Holyhead Bay. Our neighbour from the next mooring to Magic Hawk, yacht Hierro, was also making a similar journey to us. However, their final destination was Conway and not Bangor as we were going. Hierro is a much bigger yacht than Magic Hawk, so I was quite surprised that we managed to keep up with her for the first 3/4 of an hour of the journey, and it wasn't until we almost reached Carmel Head that Hierro started to pull away from us and gradually increased the distance between us up to around about Point Linus. As we approached Carmel Head, we spotted 2 dolphins just off our starboard beam. However, we were too slow to film them and they soon disappeared into the distance. It didn't take us too long to pass the Furlong Buoy, which guards a reef near Kemlin Bay. Pretty soon a little more wind started to appear from the southwest, and we could see Hierro ahead of us had raised its sails. However, we were a little bit more lazy and decided to have breakfast first. As we approached Llantliana Head, we caught up with a catamaran who was also going in the same direction, and we passed the catamaran just before we reached Middlemouse. 10 minutes later we were passing Porthwen and its abandoned brickworks, which is always one of our favourite anchorages, but not today. Later we were passing Bull Bay, where all of the houses and bungalows on the hillside have a fantastic view out to sea. Once we had passed Point Linus Lighthouse, the wind had increased, so we raised all of the sails and had a really good sail down to Truindee Lighthouse. We were quite surprised on the way, as there were many boats waiting in the Linus anchorage, and others were joining them, as we had heard Liverpool Pilot advising some of the skippers where to actually anchor. By this time the distance between Magic Hawk and yacht Hierro was increasing rapidly. However, we did manage to keep track of her until we reached Truindee Lighthouse and started to enter the Menai Strait. Some of the boats that we passed seemed enormous compared to Magic Hawk, and many had huge superstructures and large cranes on deck. When the weather's calm and settled and the boat is carving a nice groove through the water, there's no finer place to be than sitting on the bow, listening to the water swishing past the side of the hull. Truindee Lighthouse and Puffin Island were fast approaching, but we did manage to carry the sail almost all the way to Truindee before the wind died. We passed the Dinmore starboard hand buoy, which marks the start of the buoyed channel into the Menai Straits, and we continued to a point in between Truindee Lighthouse and the Red Perch Beacon to port. However, before we reached that point, we had a problem as the Genoa furler had actually jammed. We couldn't move it in or out, so I had to go down to the foredeck and managed eventually to free it. But the only thing we could do was to drop the sail and stow it below. With that little bit of drama behind us, the rest of the pilotage into the Menai Straits was quite straightforward, and eventually we passed the final starboard hand marker, which was B7, and made our way down towards Bangor Pier. Once we had almost reached the Gazelle Hotel, we turned Magic Hawk to port and headed across to Dickie's at Port Penryn. On the chart, this is one of those green bits which fin keel sailors always hate to go over, and I must admit I was staring at the echo sounder quite a lot. However, I was quite surprised from this angle to see exactly how long Bangor Pier actually is. Once inside the dock, we were going to raft up against another yacht. However, we actually went aground just before we reached it. So we managed to reverse out and we tied up against one of the mussel fishing boats and waited our turn for the crane. There were a couple of bilge keel yachts ahead of us in the queue, and they were being lifted out first. This was a completely new experience for us, as for the last 15 years we have always driven Magic Hawk into the slings of a hoist, and we've never actually been craned out before, so this was quite a scary moment. We handed over control of Magic Hawk to the staff at Dickie's boatyard, and they very professionally lifted her from the water and swung her round onto the land. It is actually a three-phase operation to move a fin-keeled yacht from the water into their boatyard, and the crane lift was the first part. The second part was to move the hoist with its slings around Magic Hawk and raise the boat, allowing the slings from the crane to be released. Phase 3 was to reverse in a special trailer which could raise and carry a yacht cradle. The legs of the cradle were adjusted to fit the hull of Magic Hawk, and then the slings were taken away with the hoist, and the trailer was able to move Magic Hawk slowly around into the boatyard. We were extremely lucky really to find a weather window at the end of October in which to bring Magic Hawk safely around to Bangor. However, we joined some of our westerly friends there in the boatyard, so hopefully together we can share those winter maintenance tasks.